Welcome to Nightmare Fuel Stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the stories. Number the lighthouse at Crow's Point. The isolation was what I wanted, what I needed. After 15 years in the Coast Guard and another 5 working security for cruise lines, I'd had enough of people. Enough of their noise, their demands, their constant presence. So when I saw the posting for a lighthouse keeper at Crow's Point, a desolate stretch of rocky coastline in northern Maine, I applied immediately. "You understand this is a 6-month posting with minimal contact," Captain Mercer had said during my interview, peering at me over reading glasses. "The lighthouse was automated in the 90s, but after several system failures, we've returned to having a keeper on site. You'll be responsible for maintenance, weather reporting, and ensuring the light remains operational." "Sounds perfect," I'd replied. She'd studied me for a moment. "Most people don't last the full rotation, Mr. Harmon." I remember smiling. "I'm not most people." 3 weeks later, I stood on the dock of the small fishing village of Port Addison, watching the supply boat that would take me to my new home. The Crow's Point Lighthouse stood 4 miles offshore on a small, rocky island, little more than a jagged tooth of granite thrusting up from the Atlantic. From the harbor, I could just make out its white tower against the gray horizon. "That's your new home," said Elijah, the boat captain, nodding toward the island. He was an old man, weathered like driftwood, with eyes the color of sea glass. "Been out there myself a few times. Beautiful spot." "Lonely, though." "Lonely is what I'm looking for," I replied. Elijah gave me a strange look. "Careful what you wish for, Mr. Harmon." The journey took 40 minutes, the small boat fighting against the swells. As we approached, the lighthouse grew from a distant white needle to a proud, stark tower. It was older than I'd expected, built in 1867, according to my briefing, with a keeper's house attached to its base. The entire structure was painted white, though years of salt spray had weathered it to a dull gray in places. "There she is," Elijah called over the engine. "Crow's Point. Light's been guiding ships for over 150 years. We docked at a small stone jetty and I helped unload my supplies, food for 6 months, maintenance equipment, books, and my personal effects. It took several trips up the steep path to the lighthouse. Supply boat comes once a month," Elijah reminded me. "Radio if you need anything urgent. Weather gets bad out here, especially come November." I nodded, surveying my new kingdom. The island was perhaps 2 acres in total, mostly bare rock with patches of hardy grass and low-growing shrubs. The lighthouse stood at the highest point, about 100 feet above sea level. "What happened to the last keeper?" I asked, suddenly curious. Elijah's face clouded. "Left before his rotation was up, didn't say much about why. And before him, same story. We haven't had anyone complete a full rotation in some time." He paused. "Listen to the radio, keep the light on, you'll be fine." With that cryptic advice, he departed, leaving me alone on my rocky outpost. I watched his boat grow smaller, feeling a profound sense of peace as the distance between myself and civilization increased. The keeper's quarters were simple but comfortable: a kitchen/living area, a bedroom, a small bathroom, and an office space. The furniture was old but sturdy, and everything was meticulously clean. Upstairs, a spiral staircase led to the light itself, a massive Fresnel lens that rotated on a clockwork mechanism, sending its beam 20 miles out to sea. I spent that first day exploring my new home, checking systems, and familiarizing myself with the maintenance schedule. The previous keeper had left detailed logs, but nothing personal. No notes, no journals, nothing to indicate why he'd left before his time was up. That night, I stood on the gallery that circled the lantern room, watching the beams sweep across the dark water. The stars were magnificent, no light pollution, just the vast, glittering canopy of the cosmos. Below me, the waves crashed against the rocks, a rhythmic, primal sound that seemed to sync with my heartbeat. This, I thought, is exactly what I needed. The first month passed uneventfully. I settled into a routine, checking the light mechanism, cleaning the lens, performing maintenance on the generator, keeping weather logs, and reporting in by radio twice daily. The solitude was everything I'd hoped for. I read books, cooked elaborate meals for myself, and spent hours watching the sea and sky. It was during the 5th week that I saw the first ship. I was on the gallery enjoying my morning coffee when I spotted it, a schooner perhaps 80 feet long with white sails billowing. It was heading north, parallel to the mainland coast, about a mile from my island. There was nothing unusual about seeing a ship. This was a shipping lane after all, but something about this vessel caught my attention. Perhaps it was the design. It looked old-fashioned, like something from a century ago. Or maybe it was the way it moved, gliding through the water with unnatural smoothness despite the choppy seas. I raised my binoculars for a better look. The deck appeared empty, no crew visible. The sails, though full, seemed to be unmanned. As I watched, the ship changed course slightly, turning toward my island. A chill ran through me, though I couldn't explain why. I lowered the binoculars and reached for the radio. Port Addison Harbor Master, this is Crow's Point Lighthouse. Do you copy? After a moment of static, a voice responded. Crow's Point, this is Harbor Master. Go ahead. I'm tracking a sailing vessel heading nor-northeast, approximately 1 mile from my position. White schooner about 80 feet. Can you identify? There was a pause. Negative, Crow's Point. No sailing vessels reported in your area this morning. We have 2 fishing trawlers about 5 miles south of you and a cargo ship 10 miles east. Nothing else on radar. I raised the binoculars again. The schooner was still there, still moving toward my island. Are you sure? I'm looking at it right now. Our radar is clear, Crow's Point. Maybe a private vessel. Not all pleasure craft file float plans. Maybe, I said, though the vessel didn't look like any pleasure craft I'd ever seen. I'll keep an eye on it. Roger that. Harbor Master out. I watched the schooner for another 20 minutes as it drew closer to the island. At about half a mile out, it changed course again, turning to pass the eastern side of the island. As it did, I caught sight of the name painted on its stern, Eleanorrigby. Something about that name triggered a memory, but I couldn't place it. I continued watching until the ship disappeared around the far side of the island. Strangely, it never reappeared on the north side, though I waited another half hour. That night, I mentioned the ship in my log but didn't radio about it again. I didn't want to seem paranoid or jumpy, not when I'd fought so hard to get this position. 2 days later, I saw another ship, a steamship this time, with a tall black smokestack moving south. Like the schooner, it had an antiquated appearance, and like the schooner, the harbor master had no record of it. This one was called Mary Celeste. That name I recognized immediately. The Mary Celeste was a famous ghost ship found adrift and abandoned in 1872. A cold feeling settled in my stomach as I watched the vessel disappear into the mist. Over the next 2 weeks, I spotted 5 more ships, all with designs that seemed to belong to the past, all with names that nagged at my memory, and none registered with any maritime authority I contacted. The harbor master began to sound annoyed when I called, so I stopped reporting the sightings. Instead, I began researching. The lighthouse had a small library of nautical books, including several on maritime disasters. In them I found references to every ship I'd seen: the Eleanor Rigby, lost with all hands in a storm in 1928, the Mary Celeste, famously found abandoned, the Orang Medan, whose crew allegedly died with expressions of pure terror on their faces, the Carol A. Deering, another ghost ship found in 1921, and others. They were all ships that had met tragic ends, abandoned, lost in storms, or vanished without trace. Ghost ships of legend, and they were all appearing off the coast of my lighthouse. I began to doubt myself. Was I hallucinating? Was isolation affecting my mind already? But the sightings were so vivid, so detailed. I started taking photographs, but the ships never appeared in the images, just empty ocean where I knew I'd seen them. The supply boat came and went. Elijah seemed concerned about me but said nothing when I asked if he'd ever seen strange ships around the island. He just gave me that same look he had on the first day, part pity, part warning. "Listen to the radio," he said again as he left. "Keep the light on." That night I couldn't sleep. The wind had picked up, howling around the tower and rattling the windows. I sat in the kitchen nursing a cup of tea when I heard it, a ship's bell, clear and distinct despite the wind and waves. I rushed to the window. Through the rain-streaked glass I could make out lights on the water, not the running lights of a modern vessel, but the warm glow of oil lamps. There was a ship anchored just offshore. Without thinking, I grabbed my raincoat and flashlight and hurried outside. The wind nearly knocked me over as I made my way down the path to the jetty. The rain was coming sideways, stinging my face, but I could still see the lights on the water. It was a fishing trawler, old and weathered, riding low in the water. As I watched, a small boat was lowered from its side, a dinghy with 2 figures aboard, rowing toward my island. I should have been afraid. I should have run back to the lighthouse, locked the door, and radioed for help. But something compelled me to stay, to wait as the dinghy approached the jetty. The 2 figures were men dressed in oilskins that might have been fashionable 50 years ago. They secured their boat and climbed onto the jetty. In the beam of my flashlight I could see their faces, weathered, bearded, with eyes that reflected the light in an unsettling way. "Evening keeper," the taller one said. His voice was rough, as if unused to speaking. "Fine night for a storm." "Who are you?" I demanded. "What ship is that?" "The Annabelle Lee," the shorter man answered. "We're just stopping for supplies." "Been at sea a long time." That name, another ghost ship, lost in a hurricane off the Carolina coast in 1958. "You shouldn't be here," I said, my voice shaking. "Your ship, it was lost." "Decades ago," the men exchanged glances. "Lost," the tall one echoed. "No, not lost, just delayed." "We need to refill our water," said the shorter one, "and we have a message for you." "A message?" "From whom?" "From those who came before, the other keepers." A chill that had nothing to do with the rain ran through me. What happened to them? Why did they leave? The tall man smiled, revealing teeth that were too sharp, too numerous. Who says they left? I backed away, suddenly terrified. The men advanced, moving with an unnatural fluidity despite the rocking jetty. The light must stay on, the short one said. That's the bargain. That's always been the bargain. What bargain? I was at the edge of the jetty now, the churning sea at my back. The light guides ships to safety, said the tall one. But some ships don't want safety. Some ships need souls. I turned and ran, scrambling up the path toward the lighthouse. Behind me I heard their footsteps, unhurried, confident. They knew I had nowhere to go. Inside, I slammed the door and locked it, then ran to the radio. Mayday, 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 this is Crow's Point Lighthouse. I need immediate assistance. Only static answered me. A pounding came at the door. Let us in, keeper, called the tall man. We just want to talk, to explain the bargain. I backed away from the door, looking frantically for a weapon. My eyes fell on the logbook, the detailed records kept by previous keepers. I grabbed it and began flipping through the pages. The most recent entries were mine, followed by those of the keeper before me, a man named Jenkins who had lasted 3 months. Before him was Donovan, 2 months. And before that, Patterson, 4 months. I flipped further back, through keeper after keeper, none lasting their full rotation. And then, 20 years ago, a keeper named Michael Harlow. His entries started normally but grew increasingly disturbed. Saw another ship today. Harbor master has no record of it. Beginning to think I'm losing my mind. The ships are coming closer. I can see faces on deck now. They don't look right. They came ashore tonight, said they needed water, said they had a message. His final entry, the light must stay on, that's the bargain. If the light fails, they take the keeper. If the keeper maintains the light, they take only those who are already lost, the ships that would wreck on the rocks without the light's guidance. One soul to save many. That's the bargain. God forgive me. The pounding at the door grew louder. Wood splintered, I ran up the spiral staircase to the lantern room. The great Fresnel lens was rotating smoothly, sending its beam out to sea. Outside, the storm was intensifying, waves crashing against the rocks with thunderous force. And there on the horizon I saw them, ships, dozens of them. Schooners, steamships, fishing trawlers, all from different eras, all ships that had been lost at sea. They were converging on my island, a ghostly armada. The door below crashed open, footsteps on the stairs. I looked at the light mechanism. If what Harlow wrote was true, as long as the light stayed on, I would be safe, but at what cost? How many souls had been taken because previous keepers had maintained the light? The tall man appeared at the top of the stairs. Behind him were others, crew members from the ghost ships, all with the same 2 sharp teeth, the same reflective eyes. You understand now, he said, the bargain. Why? I asked. Why do you need souls? The sea takes, the sea is owed. He gestured to the ships on the horizon. We are the collectors, and if I refuse, if I extinguish the light, then you join us, and the ships that would have been saved by your light will wreck, and those souls will join us too. More suffering, more loss. I looked at the beam sweeping across the water, at the armada of ghost ships, at the creatures that had once been men. The bargain was monstrous, sacrifice the few to save the many. But what choice did I have? How do I know you're telling the truth? I asked. How do I know ships will actually wreck if the light goes out? The tall man smiled. Turn it off and see. My hand hovered over the switch. Could I do it? Could I extinguish the light that had guided ships safely for over 150 years? Could I break the bargain and face whatever consequences came? The others before you chose to keep the light on, the tall man said. They understood the necessity of sacrifice. And they left, I said. They couldn't live with it. Some left, he agreed. Others joined us. I thought of the missing keepers, of ships lost at sea, of the endless, hungry darkness of the ocean. I thought of my own desire for isolation, for escape from humanity. Was this what it had led to? A choice between becoming a monster or allowing monsters to take innocent lives. The tall man extended his hand. Join us, keeper. The sea is peaceful once you belong to it. I looked into his eyes, eyes that had once been human but now reflected something ancient and cold. Then I looked at the light, still faithfully sweeping its beam across the water. No, I said, I won't join you, and I won't sacrifice others to save myself. I reached for the switch. Wait, the tall man cried. You don't understand what will happen. I understand enough, I replied and flipped the switch. The light went out. For a moment nothing happened. Then a sound rose from the sea, a moan that seemed to come from the depths themselves. The ghost ships on the horizon began to waver, like mirages in heat. The tall man and his companions were changing too, their forms becoming less solid, more like the mist that rolled in from the sea. Their faces contorted in rage and fear. You've broken the bargain, the tall man hissed, his voice now sounding like water rushing over stones. The sea will take what it is owed. The lighthouse began to shake, as if caught in an earthquake. Outside, the waves rose higher, crashing against the tower with impossible force. Water began seeping through the windows under the door. The tall man and the others were gone now, dissolved into mist that swirled around the lantern room. Their voices still echoed, a chorus of the drowned. The sea takes, the sea is owed. I fought my way back to the switch, struggling against the wind that now howled through the broken windows. With all my strength, I flipped it back on. The light blazed to life, cutting through the darkness and mist. The ghostly voices faded, the water receded, the shaking stopped. On the horizon, the armada of ghost ships remained, waiting. I understood then. The bargain couldn't be broken, only renegotiated. The light had to stay on, but I didn't have to be the one to maintain it. I made my decision. 6 months later, Captain Mercer interviewed a new candidate for the position of lighthouse keeper at Crow's Point. "You understand this is a 6-month posting with minimal contact," she said, peering over her reading glasses. "The lighthouse was automated in the 90s, but after several system failures, we've returned to having a keeper on site." "I understand," the candidate replied. "The previous keeper, Mr. Harmon, completed his rotation, the first in many years to do so," Mercer continued. "However, he declined to renew his contract." "Did he say why?" Mercer hesitated. "He left a note for his replacement. I haven't read it myself." She slid a sealed envelope across the desk. "He was insistent it be given directly to whoever took the position." The candidate took the envelope. "I'm sure it's just advice about maintenance or supplies." "Perhaps," Mercer said, though she didn't sound convinced. "In any case, the supply boat leaves tomorrow morning. The lighthouse has been running on automatic for the past week, but we prefer to have someone on site." "I'll be ready," the candidate assured her. Later, alone in a hotel room, the candidate opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a message written in a shaky hand. "To my successor, by the time you read this, I will be gone, not left, gone. The bargain I made was simple, my soul for the automation of the light. No more keepers need be burdened with the choice I faced. The light now maintains itself, powered by what remains of me. The ships still come, I can see them from where I am now, part of the sea yet apart from it. But they can take no more souls as long as the light shines. My advice to you is this: do your job, check the systems, make your reports, but know that the true keeper of Crow's Point Light is already here and will be for eternity. Listen to the radio, keep the light on." James Harmon, the candidate, stared at the letter for a long time, then slowly folded it and put it back in the envelope. Outside, the sound of waves against the shore seemed suddenly ominous, carrying whispers of what waited at Crow's Point. Tomorrow, the supply boat would leave for the lighthouse. The question was, would the candidate be on it? In the distance, a ship's bell rang, clear and distinct despite the closed windows. A signal, a warning, a summons. The sea was calling.